Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Sorry, just those who've just recently joined us. I can see a couple of people on Facebook and YouTube. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes and then inshallah we'll start very soon. So just stick with us and we'll start in a couple of minutes' time. Okay, what are you ready? What do you reckon, Lee? You ready to make a start?
Yeah. Okay.
Brilliant. Yes. So assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thanks everyone who's joined on Zoom, on Facebook, on YouTube. I can see there's a few people tuning in. So welcome. So this is the first one of these sessions we've actually run through the kind of Muslim Welfare House in Sheffield. So then I think hopefully this is going to be a kind of new series we're going to have running, where we're going to talk to people who found Islam and just learn a little bit more about their kind of journey, the challenges they faced, like unexpected things, and really all about their kind of life story. So ideally, I think we're going to run these monthly if we can, and we're going to try and do them in a bit of an interview format. So I'm going to be playing the role of Michael Parkinson, if you like, for this one. And really delighted to be joined today by our brother Lee Jones. So I know Lee through Muslim Welfare House in Sheffield. He's put himself right on the spot by volunteering to be the first one to be subject to this scrutiny. So bear with us on both our parts. This is the first time we've done this type of thing. Hopefully it'll be an informative session. I think we're going to try and do questions for maybe 30 minutes or so. But if you've got any questions as well, you can put them in the comment box wherever you are. So I think there's a Q&A thing on Zoom. There's a comment box on Facebook. There's some chat on YouTube. So I asked Lee beforehand. He's happy to answer any questions you might have. So do put them in there. So I think that's all I was going to say. So I think perhaps we'll make a start. So Lee, I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself. Actually, say a bit about who you are, your background.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name's Lee. As you can probably tell from the accent, I'm not from Sheffield. I'm originally from Newcastle. But my wife and I, we moved down here as my wife's sort of studying here. So we moved down to Sheffield, and it's a lovely city. Like, we're really happy with it. And we're thinking about staying here sort of when she's finished everything and sort of settling down here. So a little bit of background about me. I'm sort of from Newcastle, born and bred. I've been in England all my life, and basically that's the gist of it, really. If I'm just talking about my general background.
How long have you been in Sheffield, Lee?
I've been in Sheffield now almost 3 years.
Okay. And is there anything you miss about Newcastle?
Probably the beaches, to be honest. Not that we'd be able to use them at the minute, like with the whole coronavirus thing and stuff. But yeah, But one thing I love about Sheffield is it's there's a lot of sort of the Peak District's so close, and I love hiking and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's so easy, like access to all the hills and stuff like that. So it's really nice. And obviously, I miss my family and stuff from Newcastle. But other than that, I'm actually enjoying living here. So
yeah. So you've still got family up there then?
yeah. Well, the majority of my family still lives up there.
Okay.
It's only me that sort of moved out to Sheffield.
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking you don't often think of the beaches when you think of Newcastle, but of course you can kind of get out to the coast quite easily from there, can't you, on the metro?
Yeah. Well, that's it. But to be honest, it's got some really nice beaches.
Yeah.
Like it's not really known for them, but there is some really nice spots.
Yeah. I suppose I don't know what the nearest equivalent here is. Maybe Cleethorpes, but it's probably not the same. So yeah. So it's a bit about your background. So you've been in Sheffield 3 years now, but so how long have you been Muslim though?
Well, I've been Muslim now. Well, I took my shahada when I was 19. I'm now almost 31, so just over 19. Sorry, just over 11 years altogether.
11 years, wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Most of my adult life, basically.
Yeah. I remember you telling me actually the first time we met. I think the first time we met, you said often people assume you're a new Muslim. I think it's like a common assumption, isn't it? If you meet someone who's obviously a revert, it's kind of quite easy to assume, it must be kind of quite recent. And for you, it's been quite a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess tell us a little bit about kind of what it was like before you became Muslim. Tell us a bit about kind of your upbringing and your kind of life before you became Muslim.
Yeah, well, like I said, I became Muslim when I was 19. So up until then, it was sort of typical sort of British teenager lifestyle. You know what I mean? But I was like, because my background, sort of my parents weren't particularly religious. Like my dad sort of classes himself as Church of England, and I don't think my mom's particularly religious. So religion was never sort of a part in our life, and we always sort of seen it as this sort of unusual thing that people would do. But I always believed in God. Because I looked at things a lot, like I'm a really like logical person, so I'd always look at things logically, and sort of looking at the whole universe and the creation of everything. I thought that there has to be some sort of creator. So I was always like agnostic. Like I believed in God, but I never believed in sort of any religion. No religion sort of ticked all those boxes, sort of thing that I was looking for. So yeah. So there was sort of times, sort of when I was a kid, where religious stuff would come up, but it would mostly be Christian stuff, and it would be stuff about the Trinity and stuff like that. And it was like the idea of God being this sort of man in the clouds, with sending his son down. It just in my head, it just didn't sort of. I was thinking, God can't, he has to be sort of more powerful than it. He can't be anything like his creation if he's capable of doing all these things. You know what I mean? So for him to be a man, it just that sort of baffled me. I thought there has to be something, but he just can't be a man. Do you know what I mean? And I was always playing that in my head, and I was always searching for answers, even sort of from a young age. I think from about 16 onwards, I was sort of looking for the truth. I was looking for my sort of purpose and reason for being.
Yeah. What exposure you had to like Islam in that kind of when you were growing up? Like so when you were at school, what was your kind of, what were you learning about religion? Was it predominantly kind of Christianity that you were picking up at school, or did you have any kind of exposure to Islam as you were growing up?
To be honest, no. In Newcastle, I lived in an area called Walker, and it was primarily like sort of white area. There wasn't any sort of people from ethnic backgrounds. I think there was one girl in my entire high school in my year that was from a different sort of ethnic background. So all we were really exposed to is either Christianity or atheism. And then in RE, you know, typical teenager, you didn't really pay that much attention, you know what I mean? So, you know, my first exposure to Islam was actually after sort of school, when I moved out of Walker, and I moved to a place in Newcastle called Fenham. And that was more sort of culturally diverse. So from then, that's when I started sort of learning about Islam, really.
Yeah, and I guess what triggered you to start to kind of think more about Islam or learn more about it? Was there anything that kind of triggered that kind of desire to get a bit more knowledge?
Well, because when I found out about Islam, it was actually through one of my friends was Muslim. And basically we would talk, because I was really sort of, you know, like I said, I was always looking for the truth and stuff like that. So I'd always ask questions. So whatever religion it was, whether it was, you know, Christianity, Judaism, I looked at all the religions, but I never really looked into Islam because of the whole, you know, situation at the time. It was like sort of 9/11 sort of situation and stuff like that. So I'll just leave that one aside. It just doesn't sound like anything. But then with one of my really close friends being Muslim, you know, she would tell me a little bit more about it. And I got a copy of the Quran. Actually, no, I didn't get a copy of the Quran right at the beginning. I got a couple of leaflets that she had lying around the house. And I was reading some of them. And what struck me was actually Surah Al-Ikhlas. You know, Kul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. That basically says, you know, God is one. Is nothing like his creation. He does not beget, nor is he begotten. Nothing is equal, comparable to him. And he's self-sufficient. And that, to me, that was like that's the God I was looking for. That's him, basically. You know what I mean? It just made complete sense. You know, he doesn't have kids. He doesn't sort of, you know, give birth. He doesn't have a mother. Or he does, you know, he's always been there. He's self-sufficient. Do you know what I mean? This was my sort of aha moment. It's like, you know, even I was thinking, even though, you know, there's all this sort of backlash and stuff like that, this actually makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's that kind of simplicity of the message, really, that really struck a chord with you, would you say?
It wasn't so much the simplicity; it was the logic of it.
Yeah.
It just made sense.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted. I wanted something that sort of, because if a creator brought a message down, if he gave us a message, it would be something that was easy to understand, and it was something that made logical sense, really.
Yeah.
But then the more I looked into it, because once I found out about that, I thought, oh, well, I need to look more into this religion. So I started sort of studying it and looking into it. And just the more I studied it, it's like, you know, other religions, when I looked into them, it's like you'll find something and you'll be like, oh, no, that doesn't sound right. And then it'll put you off completely. But with Islam, it was like the more you learn about it, the more I fell in love with it. You know what I mean? And the more I thought, actually, this.
Yeah. Oh, hold on, you're on mute.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So I started sort of just looking into it as much as I possibly could, really.
Yeah. And how did you do that, actually? Because that's one thing I'm always interested with people, because I remember, you know, when I was in a similar position, it just felt like, you know, there's so much information out there and you kind of started from scratch. So how did you kind of go about learning?
Well, it was mostly sort of sheer Google, really. Like a lot of it was just sort of finding, because the thing is with me, I've got quite good radar when it comes to sort of, you know, good sort of legitimate websites and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I made sure the information that I was looking for was like legit, and it wasn't sort of, you know, And then, like I said, I'd ask my friends a lot of questions, and through that friend, I met a lot of other Muslim friends as well. So I'd sort of ask them questions, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, even though I got to that point, I even said to my friend, you know, you're only Muslim because your parents are Muslim. I never thought about the fact that I could sort of change my religion, that I could become a Muslim myself. You know what I mean? That never sort of crossed my mind.
Yeah.
But then it got to the point where I thought, actually, to be honest, this sounds like the truth. I want to be a Muslim.
And when was the first time you set foot inside a mosque then?
Well, I never set foot in a mosque once while I was sort of non-Muslim.
Yeah.
Until afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, I might as well tell you sort of my sort of whole Shahada situation.
Yeah. Please do. Yeah.
So my friend at the time, I didn't want to sort of, because I finally decided from all my research and stuff that I wanted to become Muslim. But I didn't want to tell my friend because I didn't want to say, oh, you know, I told you so, you know, this is it's the truth all along and stuff like that. So I thought, oh, I'll do it sneakily. So I found out in Newcastle there was sort of one of those like Discover Islam Week things, and they had a big tent in Newcastle Uni.
Okay.
So I thought, oh, I'll go along to that and sort of see if I can find someone to talk to and find out how to do, because I didn't know what Shahada was or anything. I just thought, oh, maybe you would have to get baptized or something like that, you know what I mean? And I didn't want to go to a mosque because I didn't know what it was like inside. So, oh, you know, if some random white guy goes inside the mosque, you know, what are people going to say and stuff like that? So I thought, no, I'll avoid that. I'll go somewhere. So I got to this big white tent. And as soon as I got to the door, there was a guy there, big long beard. And he's like, oh, hi, how are you doing? Can I ask you a question? And I was like, oh, yeah, go ahead. So he's like, he pointed to a table. And he's like, oh, you see that table? Do you think that table could have created itself? And I was like, no, of course it couldn't. Obviously, some, you know, carpenter or some factory, they would have had to make it. But then I was like, to be honest, mate, I don't want to sound offensive, but I already believe all that anyway. I already agree with what you're saying. I just want to know how to become Muslim. And his jaw just dropped. He was like, SubhanAllah. Wasn't expecting that. So I took my Shahada with that guy.
Yeah.
And at the time, there was actually a sort of charity called IDC, who sort of works in Newcastle. And they were sort of helping out with that event. And they sort of give me a lot of sort of information and stuff like that while I was there as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, so after I took my Shahada, I sort of hugged everyone in the room and then went outside of the tent and sort of had a cry for a bit. I was like, you know, this is like, you know, massive life change and stuff like that. And the funny thing was as well, you know, my friend who I didn't want to tell, well, one of her friends was actually volunteering at the tent. The first thing she did is rang up my friend. She's like, oh, you know, Lee's just took my Shahada. And I was like, you know what, I don't care anymore. I'm happy that I made the right decision. So from that point, that was sort of when I became Muslim. And then after that, because I was in touch with the IDC, those IDC charity, I sort of met up with one of them, and they sort of took me to the mosque and showed me how to pray and all that sort of stuff. And it just sort of led on from there, really.
Yeah. So you lost that fear of being the kind of white guy in the mosque, like soon after you'd taken your Shahada.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it was still a bit daunting. I went to the uni mosque.
Yeah.
And to be honest, from even to this day, I feel like uni mosques and sort of Muslim welfare houses and stuff are the most sort of welcoming of mosques. They're very, because of all the students and stuff. There's like large sort of array of different communities and stuff like that. So I went to the uni mosque to pray my first sort of salah. And then from then I realized that I made the right decision and just sort of, you know, carried on from there, really.
it's a common thing you hear, I think, from a lot of people I speak to, just how daunting people find it to go to the mosque for the first time, and then after they've been like once or twice, it's absolutely fine, and they realize everyone's like so friendly. But that kind of
Mm.
just going for the first time, like I speak to so many people who found it a real challenge. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But I mean, going into any sort of place of worship that's not sort of normal to you, like just say if I went to a Buddhist temple or a
yeah, yeah,
synagogue or something like that, even that I would feel a bit, you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
uncertain.
yeah. Exactly. So I guess then, how did everyone react then from your kind of from your family and your friends and people who weren't Muslim, like when they found out you become Muslim, what was people's reactions?
Well, to be honest, my because at the time, unfortunately, not so much anymore with me living in Sheffield, but I was really close to my mom. We lived only a couple of doors away from each other, so I'd visit her all the time.
Yeah,
And I never told her I was considering it, but
yeah,
I went over to sort of hers and told her the news and stuff like that. Alhamdulillah, she was really happy with it. You know, she was saying, "Oh, as long as," because she trusted that I, was sort of, I knew what I was doing and I
yeah,
wasn't just doing something crazy and stuff like that. So
yeah,
yeah, alhamdulillah, she was really happy with it. But I didn't want to tell my dad at the time, um, because I knew sort of he's not really one for a lot of change. So it was something that I didn't want to tell him. But my little sister, not so little anymore, but back then she was sort of on the other side of the door, sort of listening in, and she sort of heard the whole story. She rang my dad up and sort
wow,
of, Lee's become Muslim. He's like, what, really? At all?
wow,
So yeah, but my dad rang me up afterwards, and he sort of gave the same sort of reaction as my mom. He was, happy that I was happy, and he's willing to support me and stuff like that.
mm,
And my daddy, in this whole 11 years, he's probably been the most supportive of it, really. So
wow,
I was
mashallah.
shocked and surprised.
Yeah, yeah,
And my sort of brothers and sisters, um, I think to this day they're still a bit confused about it, but they don't sort of see me as any different or anything like that.
yeah,
Still part of the family.
yeah,
So yeah, and then my friends, like my best friends, they were sort of, they'd sort of, like the sort of teenage boy sort of thing, you're teenage and stuff like that. But other than that, they were happy that I was happy, really.
yeah,
And yeah, the Muslim friend who I was talking about before, she was sort of happy with my decision and stuff like that.
yeah.
You know, so yeah.
And has there been any times where you've come across kind of more negative reactions or kind of challenges at all?
Well, not so much with my family.
Yeah,
Um, there was a time because while I was in Newcastle, I used to do a lot of dawah stalls.
yeah.
And there was one, I don't know if I've told you this story before, but I'll tell everybody else. There was a time where the same day that I was doing the sort of dawah stall, there was a EDL sort of thing
Wow.
going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know about the EDL, but it's the English Defence League, the like anti-Islam. Um, so I'm standing there at my little stall, and about 30 of them surround me, and they're like, "Oh, you traitor, you this and that," and sort of, and there's just me just sitting there with me, my little stall. And I'm like, "What are you doing about it?" I'm
Wow.
just trying to sort of
Yeah.
give some information and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But luckily there was sort of police there as well, so they sort of moved them along, and you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I've heard some horror stories, like, but me personally, it's never been sort of, I've never had a lot of prejudice or anything from it.
And would you say the reaction you got relative to your kind of expectations before you became Muslim? Like, what did you think would happen before? Was it kind of better than you expected?
Oh yeah, 100% it was. Yeah. Well, like I said, I was scared to tell my dad. You know what I mean? So that alone said like the sort of
Yeah.
what was going through my head. But even from sort of revert perspective from the Muslim community as well, I thought that I've had sort of a negative reaction with that as well. But that was a complete opposite as well. I actually, there was a lot of people in the uni mosque who were giving me gifts and everything. So I was like, whoa, what's going on here? I'm like treated like a prince.
Yeah, suddenly got a whole lot of new friends.
Yeah, exactly. So just the whole experience was a massive shock.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of sort of, like I think the only time I've sort of had an issue was actually not to do with me becoming Muslim, but me getting married. That was sort of because the whole there's no sort of dating or anything like that in Islam. So that was sort of a bit confusing for my parents when I was like, oh, I'm going to get married. And they were like, oh, what's going on here? You know what I mean? You haven't even been seeing this girl for very long and stuff like that. So that was a bit of an issue. But, now, like just say my dad, for instance, he loves my wife to bits, you know what I mean? They're like best friends. So, it's, I think a lot of it's just down to sort of, people just don't know any better. People are scared of change and stuff, really, aren't they? So,
yeah. And, I mean, I guess I don't know if you feel the same, but my experience has often been actually people really don't understand the basic fundamentals of Islam at all. Because actually what they get is what they've heard in the media, which is a very distorted view. And actually, quite often when you speak to people for more a couple of minutes and kind of get the message across kind of quite clearly and logically. People are often a lot more kind of rational than you might expect. So that's just kind of my experience. I don't know if I'm the same.
Well, same here. To be honest, a lot of the people that I've spoke to, they want to know sort of, the people are really curious because it's like, it's like, because you kind of put two and two together. It's like, right, so the media says that this religion's full of these crazy people and stuff like that. But then there's this guy here, he looks really friendly and he's British. Why would he? And people are like, oh, I want to ask him, like, what was it that sort of brought him, And
Yeah. Excellent. So how have things been since then? So it's 11 years ago. So you've spent, a large chunk of your life in the Muslim community. How's it been? How have you found it?
Well, it was definitely the best decision I ever made. I would never sort of, go back on that. It's been a roller coaster, but a really good one, exciting one. I don't even know where to start, to be honest. I think a lot of people sort of think, oh, you're praying 5 times a day and stuff like that, and it's going to be a big burden on you and stuff. And to be honest, it's not. As long as once you sort of get into the routine, it just becomes part of your sort of daily sort of routine, really. And it doesn't sort of affect your life in any way or anything like that. It just sort of, I think everything in Islam, it fits within the sort of British lifestyle, you know what I mean? There's nothing sort of that you would do as a Muslim that would sort of, stop you from doing anything sort of, outside of what you would do generally as a normal person living in Britain, really. One of the things that was a bit challenging was my friends. They used to go out clubbing and stuff a lot. And obviously I had to turn them down and say, oh, I can't do that sort of thing anymore.
Yeah, it's a good Geordie pastime, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there are things where you could do before and you can't do now. But I guess would you probably say what you've gained is much kind of greater than what you've lost?
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, to be honest, even something like drinking, I actually quit because I was pretty young anyway, so I'd only been sort of since I was 18. But I mean, I actually quit like about maybe 6 months before I became Muslim, because I used to work sort of selling wristbands in town, like nightclubs and stuff. And just when you're the only sober one and you see all these crazy drunk people, it just completely put me off it anyway. So I was never, I would go out clubbing, but I would always sort of like, I wouldn't really drink much anyway because it wouldn't it wasn't something that appealed to me anyway.
Yeah.
And then the likes of sort of, eating pork and stuff like that. It's like it's not something that was a massive sort of, oh no, like, this is the worst thing ever. I'm never going to be able to have bacon or anything anymore. It wasn't. It was just like, yeah. Okay, just get on with it. Just have chicken or beef instead. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I think you kind of realize there's so much in the kind of bounty of nature out there that you could substitute for these like small things that you can't have. That
exactly.
feels kind of quite easy to do.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like, I'm putting all that aside, but I've actually, I've got a purpose in my life. You know what I mean? I've got like sort of serenity, I've got happiness, I've got all these things that I'm getting from Islam.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I didn't have before. And it's like, I wouldn't trade that for, just say someone gave me a mountain of gold and said, oh, give me your religion for this. I would never sort of, I wouldn't even think twice. I'd be just straight away, no, go away. There's nothing you can really compare to it that's sort of worth this, you know what I
mean? Yeah. So I guess, what would you say to, I guess a couple of questions then. What would you say to anyone who's considering becoming Muslim? And then, I guess a follow-up question, like what advice would you give people on kind of how to find out more?
Well, in terms of sort of, if someone's sort of in the position that I was in, and they're sort of looking into Islam and they really like it and stuff, I'd say just go for it. I feel like the longer you leave it, the more you're going to regret it, because like I said, like in these 11 years, the more it's like if there's a chart, and it's like the longer I've been Muslim, the higher the sort of iman goes, like their faith. It's like, the more I learn, the more I think, wow, this is just amazing.
Yeah.
So I mean, the earlier they start, the better, really. In terms of sort of finding information and stuff like that, I think just visit your local mosque. Don't be scared to sort of approach somebody. I'm sure, like if I was praying in the mosque and some random person asked me a question, or I'm not Muslim, but I'm looking to sort of find out a bit more information, I'd be happy to sort of give them all the information they need, really.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, so lots of mosques are well set up to kind of answer questions, even if you're not sure and you're curious and you want to know more. They'll be able to point you in the direction of just someone who'll be able to kind of talk to you. And I guess in my experience, just everyone you speak to is friendly.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with that. Just take the plunge and ask a question, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So looking ahead then, for you, so you've got a young daughter, isn't it?
Son.
Young son. Sorry. Sorry. Lockdown is melting my brain a little bit. Young son. Sorry. How old's your son?
He's 6 next week.
6. Yeah. So I guess what's your experience of kind of raising kind of child as a Muslim in kind of here in Sheffield, and kind of what's your kind of thoughts about that?
Well, I suppose it's just, you take the sort of values from Islam and sort of, put it into your parenting skills. And like, I always hear people saying, oh, Jibril as a kid, he's really sort of friendly, he's really happy, you know what I mean? He's always sort of got a big smile on his face and stuff like that. So I think it's just a matter of, in terms of sort of being a parent and being a Muslim and stuff like that. It's like, he watches us pray and stuff like that as well, and he'll come along and say, oh, I want to pray with daddy, and then he'll sort of he'll pretend to pray, and then he'll get bored halfway through and walk away and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been interesting, but I don't have a sort of other sort of side where I could say, oh, what it's like to be a parent as a non-Muslim, because I've been so long by that. So
fair enough. Mashallah. Okay. So, I mean, I think that gets me to the end of the questions that were on my list to ask. So, I mean, there's a few people on the call. So, if anyone's got any questions they want to ask Lee, I'm sure you'll be happy to answer them. Just put them in the comments. I'll just have a quick look whether there's anything now. So there's nothing in the comments at the moment, apart from on YouTube, someone has expressed some shock that Newcastle has beaches. So if we've taught nothing from this seminar, at least we've taught people that. So let me just have one final check to see whether there's any questions. No, so there's not, but if anyone's watching this afterwards and it sees this video and thinks, there is something I want to know, or would have asked Lee had I been on the seminar today. I'm sure if you just leave it in the comments, we can get hold of Lee and see whether he'll answer the question for people. So don't be afraid to do that. Whatever question you have, you can just kind of leave it for us there, and we'll pick it up later. So that's anything. Was there anything kind of final you wanted to mention, Lee?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but I was kind of hoping there would be some questions, to be honest. But never mind.
Well, everyone's shy. You've done such a good job of explaining things that. No, brilliant. So I mean, thanks to everyone who joined us today. I personally found it a really interesting talk. Really interesting to hear about your background, although I knew some of it already, but get that fuller picture. And I mean, thanks Lee for volunteering to be the first one in the firing line for one of these. Very brave.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, really appreciate it. We have got a question that's come in Zoom. So let's hold on for that. It's just been typed out. So we'll hold on. We nearly closed down. So there's a question on YouTube here, actually. How have you found the Muslim community in Sheffield?
They've been really lovely, really friendly. Well, because there's only two mosques I've really been to, the Muslim Welfare House and the Al-Huda Mosque. I've never really spoke to anybody in the Al-Huda Mosque, but I've made some nice friends in Muslim Welfare House. Everyone's been really friendly, like Ivan and some of the other brothers that frequent there. So yeah, it's been lovely.
It's a bit of a loaded question. You have to say that because we're on the line with you.
No, everyone was horrible. Stay away from the
we know line is haram, so we'll take it at face value. Thank you. Someone was saying it's kind of multicultural Muslim community in Sheffield. I think that's right. I mean, that's actually something I was really struck by, actually, when I attended the masjid in Sheffield for the first time. I think because it's near the hospital and near the university, but I don't think I ever realised how multicultural the Islamic community was. So that was a real kind of eye-opener.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, definitely, because a lot of cities, it's just majority. Even in Newcastle, it's majority sort of Pakistani and Bengali communities. Whereas, like in Sheffield, I live in S11, so there's not really a massive Muslim community there anyway. But all the sort of Muslims that live around Sheffield sort of go to the same local mosques, and there's a lot of diversity when you sort of go to the mosque.
Yeah, there's a shout out for Risala Mosque in the comments on YouTube too. So we're getting a good few name checks in for the mosque in Sheffield today. So there's a question here in Zoom as well, which I think is a really good one, actually, that everyone really needs to know. So from your experience, what would you recommend that people that are currently Muslim do if someone asks them about Islam? So how should we handle that? I guess, how do we go about giving that dawah?
Well, there's a thing I learned from Hamza Hortiz. I've probably butchered his surname, but he told me about a thing called Go-Rap, which is basically first talk about God, then his oneness, then the revelations, and then the prophets, and sort of explain that. And then once you've explained that, then that makes a lot more sense to people. So, because I think it's when someone asks a silly question like, oh, you know, why do you sort of, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of the most awkward question I can, like someone will say a thing about, you know, Aisha or something like that, about marrying the Prophet at a young age. And it's like, you know, you have to get them to understand what Islam is first before you sort of, you know, because if you just say, oh, you know, it was all right back then and stuff like that, they're just going to be like, oh, well, you know, this is silly and stuff. You have to act, I think, because a lot of people don't understand what Islam is and why we're sort of so passionate about it and stuff like that. So you have to sort of explain Islam first before you sort of, you know, because you need to be on the same page.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. Actually, I've not really thought about it in that way, but I think you're right. You know, like so many of the debates you can end up having a kind of these really advanced theological things or kind of historical facts, when actually, you know, starting from that common ground of like what's the basics of what we believe is probably a better place to be. So that's really good advice. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was going to say another thing as well. A lot of people base sort of Islam off these sort of radicalists and stuff like that. And I heard something like really interesting a couple of days ago, and it really strikes something like I could sort of say that to somebody if somebody asks. And it's like I thought he said basically, if a Muslim steals, does that mean all Muslims steal? You know what I mean? And it's the same with anything really. So it's like, you know, if this person is a suicide bomber or something like that, it doesn't automatically mean all Muslims are suicide bombers. It just means there's one bad person. Yeah. You know, just say if a priest goes and does, you know, some of the things that you might have heard they have done, does that mean all priests are like that? No, of course it doesn't. Yeah. And it's people sort of putting this label from sort of 2 or 3 individuals, you know what I mean? So I think it's getting them to understand, like I said, what Islam is first, and then sort of, you know, like I said, being on the same page really.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, hopefully that answers your question. I think, is it Lena in the Zoom call? So thanks for that. Really good question though. I'll just have a quick kind of final scan of what we've got on Facebook and YouTube. I don't think we've got any questions, just a few comments saying thank you for your time, Lee. So I think if that's the case, if there's no more questions, as I said, it's not the end. You can put comments on the YouTube video on Facebook, and we can always come back to them. But I think if there's no more, then perhaps we should draw it to a close for today. So thanks again, Lee, for your time. May Allah reward you for sparing us this time today and speaking to us. And inshallah, we'll hear from you again at some point in the future.
Inshallah, sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.